Hello and welcome. Before we get into today's stories, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from.
How you doing? Good, 'cause I wanted to know. Anyway, so what should we talk about today?
Southview High School in Hope Mills. Investigators searching for the teenager held a press conference just a few hours ago. Brian Mims was there. And Brian, what are they saying about the circumstances surrounding this girl's disappearance?
Jackie, what they're saying is the circumstances are a mystery. Hope Mills police are working with Fayetteville police, sheriff's deputies, the FBI. It's a task force of about 50 law officers to figure out what happened to this girl and where she is. At home, a family waits, losing a lot of sleep, but not losing hope. Danny, as everyone calls her, was missing.
No one knows what a mother goes through when I feel like my heart has been ripped out.
Danielle Locklear is a freshman at Southview High School. A good student, a popular student, her friends and police tell us.
The search began at a creek hidden deep in the woods, a place locals barely talked about but teenagers knew well. Fire pits, discarded clothes, and trampled dirt told a familiar story of late-night hangouts. What didn't belong there was the word help, carved into the ground. A few steps away, investigators found a sock, soft, unmistakably a sleep sock. It wasn't something anyone would wear outside. It was something you wore when you were supposed to be in bed. That sock belonged to 15-year-old Danielle Locklear. Hope Mills, North Carolina, sat quietly just outside Fayetteville, close enough to Fort Liberty to be filled with retired military families, far enough away to feel insulated from the world. It was the kind of town where nothing much happened, where kids biked the streets and parents assumed safety was a given. Danielle had only lived there for 10 months, but she fit in quickly. Funny, energetic, popular and academically strong, she posted playful YouTube videos and seemed genuinely happy. Living with her aunt while her parents went through a bitter out-of-state divorce, Hope Mills felt like a reset. She had friends, school, and a boyfriend, Jekyll, an older varsity runner with plans to become a Marine. On the night of March 11th, 2014, Danielle was staying with her grandfather while her aunt, grandmother, and mother were out of town. Just before 9:45 p.m., she told him she needed to return a notebook to a friend who lived a couple of houses down the road. She said she'd be back in 2 minutes. She stepped outside, closed the door, and disappeared. When she didn't return, her grandfather checked the street, then walked to the friend's house. Danielle had never arrived. By morning, police were called. The case spread fast. Local officers, sheriff's deputies, and the FBI forming a task force of nearly 50. Danielle had vanished without a trace. At first, investigators hoped she had run away or was staying with friends. Her boyfriend said they hadn't spoken in days. They had recently broken up. Family members were stunned to learn Danielle hadn't gone to school the day she disappeared. She had been skipping classes and spending time at the creek, something they hadn't known. CCTV footage placed her there earlier that day. Witnesses said she seemed fine. The creek became the centre of the investigation. In addition to the sock, more of Danielle's clothing was later found nearby. K-9 units, firefighters, divers. Everyone searched. Nothing turned up. Her phone's final signal pinged near Interstate 95 and appeared to be moving fast, suggesting she'd been in a car. Then the signal stopped. I-95 ran the entire East Coast. That realization widened the nightmare. Suspects surfaced and faded just as quickly. A classmate named Derek claimed to be close to Danielle, though no one else supported that claim. Rumours at school escalated, some violent, but when questioned, Derek's story unravelled into exaggeration rather than evidence.
Thing I know about her, white female, black hair, blue eyes, went missing March 11th.
Did you see her in school? Where'd you see her at?
Walking around in hallways. I basically said hey to her one time, and that was when I was talking to my friend Caroline. From what I've seen on Facebook, very beautiful face. She was a very, very young girl.
So you're infatuated with her. She kind of got like a secret crush. No.
She was a little. She seemed a little too preppy.
Kind of standoffish.
Yeah.
Was she standoffish to you?
She seemed like a goody goody. And honestly, I don't hang out with goody goodies. Goody goodies have a bad habit of snitching.
Items seized from his home looked promising at first. Knives, a burn pit, a shovel. But forensic testing ruled them out. Another dead end. 10 days passed. Then 20. Hope Mills held its breath.
10 days after Danielle Locklear was last seen, police focused their search on this wooded area near the creek where the 15-year-old's family heard she may have been when she first went missing. It's at her school where police are asking volunteers to meet tomorrow morning to help continue the search for Locklear.
On April 2nd, an off-duty detective driving to a fishing spot noticed something floating in the South River. It was a body. Danielle Locklear had been underwater the entire time, tied to cinder blocks. She had been strangled. A sock had been forced into her mouth, the matching pair to the one found at the creek. The location raised new questions. The river was roughly 30 minutes from the creek. It was also 30 minutes from Jekyll's home. Police re-examined him closely. Text messages between him and Danielle from days before her disappearance were recovered. Angry, cruel, threatening. He had blocked her, but she kept finding ways to contact him. Investigators also discovered the same type of cinder blocks and rope used to weigh down Danielle's body at his residence. Still, they didn't have enough to arrest him. Jekyll claimed he was home the night Danielle disappeared. His mother and grandmother supported the alibi, though neither had actually seen him. His friend Dominic, who owned a car, refused to speak to police and hired a lawyer. Days later, Jekyll returned to the station and confessed. He said Dominic had driven him to Danielle's house that night. She climbed into the car willingly. They went to the creek to talk. Danielle claimed she was pregnant. Jekyll didn't believe her and demanded proof. He told her he would take responsibility if the child was his, but he would not get back together with her. According to him, the argument escalated. Danielle struck him. He said he blacked out. When he came to, he had strangled her. They drove her body to the river near his home, tied cinder blocks to her, and dumped her into the water. To cover his absence, Jekyll had scheduled text messages using an app to make it appear he was home all night. Investigators didn't believe the blackout story. They believed the creek had been chosen for privacy, the text for deception, and the outcome planned.
Body, if it is her, really how did it get down there? Somebody could have done it, but trying to frame you. Because me and Mama know in our heart you ain't did nothing.
Too much. Okay.
You're saying you didn't have anything to do with it. How do you think that's going to make you look?
If y'all can prove it has something to do with it, which y'all are not going to be able to because it doesn't have anything to do with it, I'm going to look perfectly fine.
Well, then help me with this. Why did you fail the polygraph?
I was nervous. I'm nervous sitting here now, so you think I'm a smart kid.
Yeah, I do think you're a smart kid.
Why in the world would I put her down the street and around the corner? Where's my home? Yes, sir. Right there. Come over there.
What if I tell you that we found the rope that she was tied up with?
And y'all found the rope
At your house?
shouldn't be around
Why shouldn't it be?
because it has nothing to do with it.
Why the cinder blocks? Why the rope?
Yeah.
Why the polygraph? The evidence that's not going to lie. That's going to be the one thing that will get you at the end. You're going to look like a monster. You're not going to win this battle.
I took my wallet and I threw it against her window. came out, she got in the car, and we went to the creek. And we sat down and talked for a while. And she was supposed to take a pregnancy test in front of me. The whole time was like, take it, and she would prove it to me right now. We were talking at first, and then I was like, I told her, no matter if you have this kid or not, I'm going to take care of my responsibilities. If it's mine, it's mine. I'm going to do what I got to do to step up and be a man. But I don't want to be with you at all. And she flipped, and she snapped on me. She punched me in my face. And she slapped me and jumped on top of me and got all over me. So all I remember was I grabbed her. I was choking her.
But you didn't know now. So, why would you do that? She was making a noise. When the sock was being placed in her mouth, did she move at all? Move her arms? Legs?
She was done. Put her in the car. Threw her over the side, took her to the river. Take her to the grave and tunnel body.
Medical testing later confirmed Danielle was not pregnant. Jekyll pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a sentence of 25 to 31 years. Danielle Locklear's family was left with memories, grief, and unanswered questions.
To give her a high school diploma. I cannot watch her get married. That's the only one I can't even have any more children. And you took that away from me. You ripped out my soul.
Police say the 19-year-old confessed to strangling Locklear during an argument. They say he and a friend tied cinder blocks around her body and dumped her into the South River. Danielle's body was found a month later.
I know there's nothing I can do there, what I can say. It's going to bring her back. But I do want to apologize for the actions that I made. You know, sorry doesn't cut it. But I do want to say I'm truly sorry.
Malloy pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder and will spend a minimum of 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
The truth of what she believed, what she said, and what truly sparked that night died with her. What remained was the reality. A 15-year-old girl left her house for 2 minutes and never came back. In trying to protect his future, Jekyll destroyed it. And in the quiet town of Hope Mills, the creek in the woods would never be just a hangout again. On the morning of January 18th, 2016, Spokane Valley Sheriff's deputies responded to a frantic 911 call. Dwayne Thurman, a part-time sheriff's deputy himself, told dispatchers that he had just shot his wife. His story was simple, almost rehearsed. It was an accident. According to him, Brenda was sitting on the couch with her iPad while he was handling her .380 Glock pistol. He claimed he thought the chamber was empty when he pulled the trigger, but the gun fired, striking Brenda in the chest. Brenda Thurman was only 40 years old, a counsellor at the local VA hospital. By the time deputies arrived, she was dead on the living room floor. Dwayne sobbed, insisting he hadn't meant to kill her, that it was a terrible mistake. But for Brenda's children, Gabby and Michael, those words rang hollow. To them, this wasn't an accident. This was the culmination of years of tension, control, and, as they later claimed, infidelity. The initial investigation seemed shockingly casual. Detectives logged the death as a likely accident, barely pushing for deeper forensic testing. Yes, Brenda's gun was collected. Yes, residue samples were taken from her hand. But those samples sat in evidence untested. Her iPad, which might have proven or disproven Dwayne's version of events, was never even checked. Almost immediately, suspicion grew that Brenda's death was being handled lightly because of Dwayne's connections in law enforcement. The timing made things even stranger. Just days after Brenda's death, another tragedy struck the Spokane Fifth Hospital community. A week after Brenda's sudden death, Spokane was hit with another tragedy. On January 25, 2016, Dr. John Marshall, chief of surgery at the VA hospital, went out for his usual morning jog and never came home. His wife, Susan, immediately knew something was wrong. John was disciplined to the bone, Marine trained, Army trained, the kind of man who lived by routine. If he said he'd be home after a run, he'd be home. But that morning, his car stayed parked at the YMCA. His wallet and phone left behind in his locker. The only thing missing was him. Police launched a search along the Spokane River, which bordered John's jogging route. They walked the trails, scanned the banks, even dragged parts of the water. But when night fell, they had nothing. Then, the next morning, a worker downtown spotted something floating in the current. John's body caught in a cluster of bushes along the riverbank. At first glance, detectives leaned toward an accident. Maybe he slipped during his run. Maybe he lost his footing and fell into the water. But the scene raised too many questions. John was still fully clothed, running jacket zipped, gloves and shoes in place. His iPod Nano, still in his pocket with wired headphones attached, turned on without issue. The liquid damage indicator was clear, as if it had never even touched water. If John had really been tumbling in the rapids for more than 24 hours, that little device should have been fried. Even stranger, his body showed signs of blunt force trauma to the chest, injuries that didn't match a slip-and-fall accident. His clothes weren't ripped or torn. There were no scrapes on his body, no debris tangled in his hair or clothes, nothing to suggest he'd been dragged through a fast-moving river. It almost looked like he'd been placed there, intentionally positioned, as if someone wanted it to look like an accident. The medical examiner eventually ruled his death an accidental drowning, but Susan Marshall didn't buy it for a second. She was a surgeon herself, with years of combat medical experience, and she insisted that her husband's injuries happened before he ever hit the water. To her, it looked less like a jog gone wrong, and more like an execution. And here's where the stories began to collide. Whispers started spreading around the VA that John Marshall and Brenda Thurman may have known each other, more than casually. Some co-workers claimed they'd seen the two bump into each other often in the halls, maybe even carrying on a quiet affair. If that rumour was true, then within a single week both halves of that alleged relationship were dead. Accidents, or something much darker? For Spokane police, both deaths were closed cases. Tragic accidents, nothing criminal. But for the families left behind, that explanation was unacceptable. Susan Marshall, John's widow, wasn't just grieving. She was furious. She knew her husband, knew his routine, and she knew how careful he was. She also knew enough medicine to recognize that the injuries on his body didn't line up with an accidental fall. So, when law enforcement shrugged and told her there was nothing more to be done, she decided to dig on her own. Susan hired a private investigator named Ted Pulver, a former cop who had no problem questioning the official story. Pulver immediately noticed things that didn't add up. John's iPod Nano, for example. Perfectly dry, still playing music, after supposedly sitting in a whirlpool for 24 hours. Impossible. His clothes, completely intact. His body, barely a scratch on it. Pulver concluded that John hadn't drowned by accident. He'd been ambushed, killed, and then placed in the water later to make it look like he slipped. Pulver even had a theory. John had been waterboarded. Near his body, investigators had found 2 random tubes, a garden hose and a piece of a bike inner tube, floating in the water. Pulver believed those weren't just trash, they were tools. To him, it screamed interrogation, torture, and execution. Susan, as both a wife and a surgeon, agreed. She reviewed her husband's autopsy herself and came to her own conclusion. The blunt force trauma to John's chest was pre-mortem. It happened before he died, not after. She even pointed out a red line across his throat that the medical examiner didn't mention in the official report. To her, this wasn't just sloppy police work. It was a cover-up, whether intentional or not. Meanwhile, over in the Thurman household, Brenda's daughter Gabby had been saying the same thing since day one. She never believed her adoptive father Dwayne's story about an accidental gun discharge. She'd heard the shot, rushed downstairs and found her mother bleeding on the kitchen floor, while Dwayne stood there, doing nothing. Gabby tried CPR, begged her father to help, but in her heart she knew this wasn't an accident. 2 grieving women connected by tragedy now found themselves asking the same chilling question. Could Brenda Thurman and John Marshall's deaths be linked? And if they were, who wanted them both gone? Despite investigators first ruling Brenda's death an accident, her family and Susan Marshall refused to accept it, filing a civil lawsuit that not only blocked Duane from inheriting Brenda's pension, but also forced long-delayed forensic testing of her Teal Glock. When the weapon was finally examined after 16 months, it was found to be in perfect working order, destroying Duane's claim of a malfunction.
How long were you home before the gun went off?
20, 30 minutes.
What were you doing just before it went off?
I just started to break it down. She came over, she sat in front of me, she started looking on the internet on what's the problem, what's going on with them. I started to take hers apart, and it went off.
He was arrested and charged with manslaughter, though prosecutors avoided a murder charge, saying they couldn't prove intent. At trial, Duane broke down on the stand, insisting through tears that it had been a tragic mistake, while the jury ultimately convicted him of second-degree manslaughter, sentencing him to 5 years in prison. In the years that followed, Susan pressed to link Brenda's case to her husband, John Marshall's suspicious death, convinced both had been silenced because of an affair or the perception of one. In 2022, a new medical examiner reviewed Brenda's case and reclassified it as homicide, though double jeopardy meant Duane could never face a murder charge. He was released from prison that September, while John's death remains officially unsolved. 2 families still left without full justice.
I got sent home early yesterday. I got sent home early today by the same person. I'm telling you, she's a bully. This shit isn't funny. She needs to understand that just because she's a mother and got children doesn't mean that she can come in this store, disrespecting people talking to.
So on the morning of July 10th, 2025, this 26-year-old woman named Afeni Badu Muhammad shows up for her shift at the McDonald's on 9 Mile Road in East Point, Michigan. From what most people say, she was just a regular employee, nothing out of the ordinary. But by the end of that day, she'd be facing life in prison. It was just before 8 in the morning when she and her manager, Jennifer Harris, got into some kind of argument. Now, Jennifer was 39, the manager at that location, and honestly, she sounds like one of those people everybody knew and loved. She'd been working at that McDonald's for 15 years, running the place while also raising 6 kids on her own. People who knew her described her as hard-working and genuinely kind. Her pastor said Jennifer's smile could light up a room and that she was basically like a daughter to the whole church. She was the kind of person who was either at church, at work, or with her kids. Just a really devoted mum. Anyway, during the argument, Jennifer told Muhammad to go home early. No one knew at the time how serious that would turn out to be. A little while later, Muhammad went out to her car, grabbed a big kitchen knife, then came back. And it gets even worse. Surveillance video and witnesses say she slipped back in through the employee entrance, wearing a hooded mask to hide her face. The second Muhammad came back in with that mask on, things turned violent fast. Witnesses say she went straight for Jennifer, grabbed her from behind, and in a split second pulled out the knife. She stabbed her as many as 15 times. Jennifer screamed and went down, and the whole place just erupted into chaos. Out in the drive-thru, a customer sitting at the window actually saw it happen. He had a gun on him, legally carried, so he fired one shot through the glass trying to stop her. The shot didn't hit anything, but it was enough to freak Muhammad out. She dropped the knife and ran out. The guy chased her into the parking lot, tackled her, and held her at gunpoint until police got there just a few moments later. When the officers arrived, they cuffed her right there on the pavement and took her in. Paramedics rushed Jennifer to the hospital, but she didn't make it. Her injuries were just too severe. Afterward, investigators started piecing together why this even happened. During questioning, Muhammad straight up admitted she'd gone home that morning planning to kill Jennifer. Then police found something even worse, an Instagram video she'd posted 2 days before. In it, she was complaining that Jennifer was a bully and saying she'd been sent home 2 days in a row over minor stuff. She ended the video with this creepy warning that somebody's going to do something if things didn't change.
But to get sent home 2 days in a row, man, and I came in on my off day to make up my time, and she still sends me home early, it's not funny. Somebody gonna have to do something about that. It's not funny. It's not fair. It isn't funny at all. So, she could keep being a bully if she wants to, but that shit is going to catch up to her. Because it ain't funny at all. It ain't.
Police say those Instagram videos really show just how much resentment Mohammed has built up toward Jennifer. In her rant, she even brought up Jennifer's kids. By the very next day, July 11th, Mohammed was standing in court. She was officially charged with first-degree premeditated murder, which in Michigan means life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus some weapons charges on top of that. The judge Kathleen Galen set her bond at an almost unbelievable $25 million. During the arraignment, prosecutors pointed out that Mohammed had a history. They said she'd been involved in at least one other stabbing before this, which they saw as a pretty disturbing pattern. Her lawyer immediately pushed for a psychiatric evaluation, hinting that her mental state might be an issue. The judge agreed, so now her case is on hold until those results come back. From the start, police and prosecutors have called the whole thing brutally senseless. In a statement, the prosecutor described Jennifer's death as an absolutely senseless and heartbreaking tragedy, and reminded everyone that she left behind 6 kids. Right now, the only real hint at a motive beyond the workplace drama is Mohammed's own angry rant. She's still in jail waiting for the case to move forward, and if she's convicted, she's guaranteed to spend the rest of her life behind bars. Honestly, the first thing that jumps out is just how fast this whole situation spiraled from a workplace disagreement into something completely irreversible. Lots of people have bad mornings at work, arguments with a boss, frustration over being sent home, but for most it ends with some venting, maybe even quitting the job. In this case, Mohammed's decision to not just leave but come back armed, masked, and clearly intent on violence shows that she had crossed a line long before she even stepped back inside. That's not a heat-of-the-moment reaction. The fact that she admitted in interrogation that she planned to kill Jennifer after leaving the store confirms it wasn't some impulsive loss of control. It was premeditated. What makes it even harder to process is who Jennifer Harris was. By all accounts, she was someone deeply rooted in her family, her church, and her community. She'd worked at that McDonald's for 15 years, which tells you she was committed, and she was raising 6 kids on her own. Taking someone like that away, especially in such a public, brutal way, doesn't just impact one family. It sends shockwaves through an entire neighborhood. You've got kids who just lost their mum, a congregation grieving someone they saw every Sunday, and co-workers who witnessed something they'll never unsee. The senselessness of it makes it all the more tragic because it's not like there was some unavoidable clash. This was avoidable from the start. And then there's Mohammed's history and the social media posts. That Instagram rant, calling her boss a bully, mentioning being sent home, shows that her anger had been simmering for at least days before this happened. Add in that prosecutors say she's been involved in at least one other stabbing, and you're looking at someone with a dangerous pattern of resorting to extreme violence. The defense asking for a psychiatric evaluation makes sense, because either she's deeply unstable or she's just extremely willing to act on her anger, and both possibilities are alarming. But regardless of what that evaluation shows, the outcome is the same. A devoted mother is gone, 6 kids are left without her, and one decision in a McDonald's parking lot changed multiple lives forever.